RTIC's own tagline for their new wheeled cooler is "Take good times on the go with our all-terrain wheeled cooler." So I thought I'd test out this all-terrain claim and see how good these wheels really are.
Gear up and get outside.
So if you're looking for a wheeled cooler, you're probably wanting something that's very portable, very easy to move around. And so you're looking at something with wheels built in. You may also want wheels because a lot of these high-end coolers are so darn heavy. And so that word ultralight in this cooler's name might attract you as well. This is the RTIC 52 quart ultralight wheeled cooler. So I wanted to get one straight away and put it to the test for myself. I started out by filling this cooler up with water, and I put in a bag of ice for good measure and sound effects. And I wanted to pull it around on all different types of terrain just to see how it felt. Because, you know, if you're gonna have wheels, then are they really worth it? I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, a sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And to be honest, it felt pretty good. I mean, it does tow nicely, it's got a good handle, it's got nice smooth wheels, good bearings, an axle that didn't get all gummed up in the mud. But then I wanted to take that test just a step further and really push the limits. And I gotta say, I was more impressed than I expected to be. It took me a lot longer than I expected before I flipped that thing over. I really had to crank into it and start spinning almost cookies in order to get it to flip. Even then, it's still in pretty darn good shape. I mean, it's dirty, of course, but here I did notice a little bit of bubbling up, maybe some separation of that outer lid shell to the inner foam insulation. But man, the wheels are still solidly attached. Drain plug's intact, although that little cable tether came out of the little groove there. The handle looks good. That silicone bit took a little bit of a bruise, but you know, the plastic, I don't see any cracks. I don't see any major flaws even after being tumbled and torn in the mud. Well, I'm unsatisfied with the level of destruction, but I am satisfied with the durability of this cooler. This is a different construction type than, say, a Yeti Tundra, which is kind of that classic roto-molded cooler. Those are known to be super heavy duty, super robust, super tough. Because of the manufacturing process, they got this thick, solid one-piece outer plastic shell with that really dense foam inside. This cooler has multiple pieces of plastic that are assembled together, screwed together essentially. So it's probably injection molded or maybe thermoformed, which are just different manufacturing processes that are a little cheaper, usually use different types of plastic and result in a slightly thinner shell. So this might not be quite as tough, but that's also probably where they're shedding some weight. And that said, I mean, even after towing it around, it's still in great usable shape, so I'm not turned off by that. My guess is this is made of a high impact polystyrene plastic. It's similar to what you get for tool cases or plastic toolboxes, you know, that durable plastic that can take a pretty good beating. I don't know that for sure, actually. I haven't confirmed that. I'm just assuming. One of the key selling points that RTIC puts on this cooler is that it is 30% lighter than its competitors. I happen to have been testing some wheeled coolers lately. I have about 8 of them, including the Yeti Tundra Hall, and that's probably the main one they're trying to attack here or compete with. The Yeti Tundra Hall, I weighed at 37.8 pounds. RTIC claims 30 pounds on this. 30% lighter is a bit of an exaggeration based on that cooler because that's not quite, it's more like 20%. So it is indeed lighter, but ultralight is just a word, that's a marketing word they put in there. You want ultralight, you're gonna buy a much cheaper blow molded cooler, but this is a good balance of weight and toughness. Another cooler that weighs in at almost the exact same weight as this is the Lifetime 65 quart high performance wheeled cooler. That one is very similar in a lot of ways, but it's actually blow molded plastic, so a little bit cheaper plastic construction, but it works great. I've been using it. It's got more capacity than this one. I put it in the same class. However, there are some really nice touches and additional features to this RTIC ultralight wheeled cooler that you don't find on some of those other wheeled coolers, such as the wheels themselves. Now, apparently RTIC designed these wheels themselves. They're not just sourced from somewhere. They have this kind of soft, spongy feel to them. Little bit of bounce, not a ton, but enough to kind of take off some of the hard shock that a cheaper wheel would feel. Another nice feature of this is that the axle goes straight through the cooler. It's not exposed in any way. There's no crack. That just keeps sand and dirt and junk from getting in there and gumming up your axle. So it should continue to roll smoothly. Seems to have really nice bearings that turn great. I mean, even after dragging it through mud puddles and sand, it seems to be just fine. The wheels are a nice diameter and they're nice and wide, so they don't sink as well. They still may sink a bit on the beach and stuff when you've got really deep sand, but overall they're gonna be pretty good. These wheels are also puncture proof because they're not pneumatic. You don't have to blow them up, but that's the case with most wheeled coolers. These just have a nicer feel to them. The towing handle on this cooler is also great. The biggest thing I like about this is it's kind of like a soft close, almost like those drawers. Not quite fully soft, but it doesn't slam down as much as some. That's just a nice little touch. It's got nice big grippy silicone grips on them. It's an aluminum handle that is powder coated, so it's just a nice quality handle to tow around. It has handles on either side that make it pretty easy to carry one person as long as it's not full. My wife and I were able to lift this into the truck over the side when the rest of the truck was filled up, and it wasn't too bad, but you know, that's always one of the hassles. It's par for the course on handles. Nothing special, but it does the job. And they don't get in the way like some other coolers that have handles flopping around. The handles also double as your tie down slots. You could tie it down to a trailer or a hitch carrier or something like that. These T-Latches are easy to use, easier than like the typical RTICs actually, or a Yeti cooler. Inside it has a freezer style gasket around the lid where it contacts the base of the cooler. That'll probably do pretty well at keeping most of the air out. But a big question I have on these coolers is leakage. Are they really watertight? Now most don't claim that and aren't really supposed to be that necessarily, but that's kind of ideal if they are, right? This is not leak proof. You really get water in there or your ice starts to melt after a few days and you're getting a lot of sloshing going on in there. This is gonna slosh, this is gonna leak, especially as you're towing it around, towing it upstairs, towing it behind a side by side, whatever you're doing, it's gonna slosh a bit. So that's kind of par for the course as well. It appears to leak a bit, but only in serious sloshing conditions, and it's full of water. When it comes to leakage, one thing I did test and I noticed, because I've seen this on other coolers, is the drain valve. Does the drain valve really hold the water inside, or does it leak slowly? Or do you have to crank it down so tight that you almost need a wrench to get it tight enough so that it doesn't leak? That did not seem to be the case with this. Just hand tight, it held water in, nothing was leaking from there. It was only leaking when I filled it chock full of water and it was moving around and water was sloshing out under the lid. Speaking of the drain plug, I do like that it's tethered. It's got that cable tether, although it seemed to not hold on to that cap very well, so I'll have to put that back on and tighten it up. The drain plug on this, it is the style that I'm not a huge fan of, where the male end actually sticks out of the cooler. The downside of that is it can get bunged up. It can hit on something. Since it's made of plastic, those threads can get gummed up, and that makes it harder to turn tight over time, and it may leak later, even if it doesn't right out of the box. It's also a larger diameter and a different threading than like a garden hose, so you can't hook up a hose directly to it and drain it without some kind of adapter. That's different than the regular Arctic ultralight cooler, where you actually have two drain plugs, one on either side, and they're different sizes. This one, you just have the one, and it's a male part that sticks out, female cap that goes on. So just beware, you might need extra caps, or that part might have to be replaced over time. I've had other coolers that got messed up and where that didn't work for forever. A few other nice features on this are this bottle opener. Now a lot of coolers these days have those. It's a little bit gimmicky, but it's also useful. And it does have one. It's metal, it's on the corner. It seems to be protected when the lid's closed. Actually, that's right where the keyhole is too. If I get this mud out, flipping it over earlier. So there is a hole where you could actually lock it with a padlock, and then right under that is where that bottle opener is. This is also kind of a clever little feature here. They put in this silicone net right here on the lid. So you just have this really narrow, I mean, it's probably 3/4 of an inch deep place where you could slide some things. I imagine putting like Go-Gurts for my kids, or, you know, little stuff that you want quick access to that doesn't need to be super cold, right up in here. So that's kind of a nice little feature, and that is included with it. As far as accessories go, there are some additional accessories you can add, like a divider or a basket. I don't have those on this. They don't come standard, but there are a few things you can add onto this cooler. And it's got non-skid feet. I managed to skid them anyway, but it does have these grippy feet right here. Oh, one of those did take some damage in my shenanigans. But they also stick out a bit so that the cooler does sit level when it's just on the ground. Now, the main thing a cooler is designed to do is to keep our food and drinks cold. RTIC says this cooler can retain ice for up to 7 days. Now, I didn't do a full ice retention test with this exact cooler, but I did do it with the regular RTIC 52 quart ultralight, which is essentially the same without wheels. In fact, you should check out my video on that 28 cooler ice challenge I did where the RTIC 52 quart ultralight non-wheeled cooler was included, and you can see the results. But basically it did quite well, but it was done after 6 days. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep meat safe and to keep drinks cold. It didn't do quite as well as the more traditional rotomolded coolers, including RTIC's regular 65 quart hard cooler or others in that class. This cooler has 2.5 inches of closed cell foam insulation inside the plastic shell. That's pretty good. Some of the best coolers have a bit more than that. But as you add more, you're also adding a lot more bulk and weight. So it doesn't have quite as much insulation as some of the others out there, but it's still quite good. All right, so what do I really like and dislike about this cooler? I like that it is durable. It's more durable than I expected. I really wanted to push it with this thing, pushing it off things and pulling it around with that ATV because I wanted to know, is this really as tough as some of those other rotomolded coolers out there? Yeah, that's not a full lab test or anything. It was all in good fun, but it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to. You can hold the side of the handle and keep your feet out of the way so that the cooler's not hitting you in the back of the calves. At 6'1", it was comfortable to tow. Even when full of water and pretty heavy, it was manageable. I like RTIC's latches on these. They're pretty easy to use. Even my kids can get them open and closed pretty easy. I like the handles, and frankly, I like that it doesn't have those extra rope handles. I find that kind of unnecessary, especially on a wheeled cooler. I like this little silicone net in there. The other thing I like about this is that it's a reasonable price. Now, it's not a cheap cooler. It's also not the most expensive. I also really like RTIC's customer service. I sent them an email anonymously, and they actually responded to me within less than 48 hours. I think I sent them an email, after business hours one evening, and by the next morning before noon, I had a response, and it was cheerful and helpful and gave me the information I asked for. Now, some things I don't love about this cooler. One is it's not the most stellar warranty you get. The warranty on this cooler is only 1 year. I wish it was 3, 5, or lifetime like some of the others out there. And lastly, I don't love that when water really gets to sloshing around in there that it leaks out the lid pretty well. And I think that's the same with a lot of coolers like this, but when you're starting to pay that kind of money, I'd love to see it be a little better. And finally, while they call it the ultralight wheeled cooler, it is lighter than other rotomolded coolers. I haven't seen any of them that are 30% heavier than this. They're all more like 20% heavier, and they are also more robust or larger, except for maybe like the Rover roller. That one is pretty darn heavy. Some of the marketing exaggerations aside, this is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option. I hope you found this review helpful. Click on that like button below. I also invite you to subscribe to our channel for more detailed gear reviews like this. Now, if you want to see another video where I do some crazy cooler tests, check out this video where I did an ice retention challenge with 28 different coolers. You'll be surprised at who wins. That was fun, but it was a lot harder than I thought to tip that thing over. I went through everything with this. Mud, dirt roads. But alas, I flipped it in the grass, spinning out.